Anaya Rathore entered her marriage with hope, but just 72 hours later, her name would be linked to one of the most chilling crimes Jaipur had ever seen. Behind Karen Mehta's polished image and perfect wedding smiles was a secret that pushed Anaya into a spiral of betrayal, fury, and deadly calculation. What began as a celebration transformed into a nightmare, one that ended with two bodies, a hidden apartment, and a bride whose silence concealed a terrifying truth. The wedding took place in Jaipur during the early days of winter, when the city glowed with warm lights and cheerful music. Anaya Rathore, a 29-year-old woman known for her disciplined nature and quiet confidence, entered the marriage with hopes of building a stable and respectful life. Her family had spent months preparing every detail, believing this match with Karen Mehta, a well-established businessman from a respected family, would finally bring her the happiness she deserved. Guests admired the couple, praising their compatibility and fortune. The marriage appeared perfect from the outside, filled with colorful rituals, joyful family gatherings, and moments that seemed like the beginning of a harmonious future. Behind the cheerful celebrations, Anaya carried a subtle uneasiness she couldn't explain. She had felt it during the last week leading up to the wedding, a heavy sensation that something wasn't right. Karen had seemed distracted throughout the ceremonies, often stepping away for long periods under the excuse of urgent work matters. Although Anaya noticed these patterns, she kept her thoughts to herself, trusting that once the wedding pressure settled, everything would return to normal. Her family had invested their emotions, reputation, and finances into the marriage, and she didn't want to create unnecessary tension by voicing her doubts. As the wedding day moved forward, Anaya observed small details that disturbed her. Karen's phone never left his hand, even during rituals where he was supposed to be fully present. His expression changed when certain notifications appeared, as if something or someone outside the celebration had more importance than the moment he was living. Guests, unaware of these subtle shifts, continued to admire the couple as if they were witnessing a fairy tale beginning. Anaya forced herself to smile for photos, greet relatives, and perform ceremonial duties. Inside, however, she felt a distant G. The first full day after the wedding brought an uneasy silence that Anaya could not ignore. The excitement of the ceremonies had ended, and the couple finally settled into their new home. She expected warmth, attention, and the early steps of building a partnership. Instead, she found Karen increasingly distant. He woke up early, spent long hours outside the house, and returned with vague explanations about meetings and urgent business that he claimed could not wait. Anaya tried to convince herself that this was normal for a man with many responsibilities, yet the suddenness of his behavior made her uncomfortable. Throughout the day, she noticed small actions that deepened her worry. Karen kept his phone locked at all times, even when he left it on the table for a few seconds. He walked away whenever a call came in, lowering his voice until it was nothing more than a faint murmur. Messages flashed on the screen only briefly before disappearing, as if he had adjusted the settings to keep them hidden. Anaya observed the way he grew irritated when she entered the room unexpectedly, as though her presence disrupted something he was trying to conceal. In the evening, while preparing the room, she found things that didn't align with the life they were supposed to start together. A receipt for a restaurant she had never visited from the night before the wedding. A faint trace of perfume unfamiliar to her. A woman's bracelet tucked inside the pocket of a jacket he had worn recently. Each discovery created a heavier feeling in her chest, one that pushed against her attempts to remain calm. She tried to maintain normalcy around the family, but inside she felt a growing fear that her marriage already carried cracks she couldn't repair. The trust she hoped to build was slipping away before it even began. Something about Karen's behavior hinted at a secret, and the more she observed, the more she felt it was On the third day, Anaya's suspicions solidified into something she could no longer ignore. Every small clue she had found earlier now seemed part of a larger and more painful truth. That morning, while Karen was in the shower, his phone vibrated repeatedly on the bedside table. The screen lit up just long enough for her to glimpse a name she didn't recognize. The same name had appeared on one of the receipts she found earlier. The coincidence tightened her chest. Curiosity mixed with dread pushed her to look deeper, not out of impulse, but out of need to understand what was happening inside her new marriage. Later that day, when Karen left for another unexplained meeting, Anaya decided to search for answers. She opened his wardrobe and drawers, examining anything that seemed out of place. Inside a hidden pouch sewn beneath his jacket lining, she found an old photograph. It showed Karen with a woman she had never seen, their closeness unmistakable. The date written on the back revealed it was taken only a few weeks before the wedding. This discovery struck her harder than anything before. She realized the relationship was not a distant memory, but something recent, something alive. Unable to stop herself, Anaya searched further and found digital traces on his laptop. Emails, shared photos, and travel bookings that matched the same woman from the photograph. Their exchanges described plans for a future, conversations filled with affection, and instructions for meeting secretly even after his marriage. The details formed undeniable proof that the affair continued during the wedding preparations and had not ended after the ceremony. Anaya sat still, overwhelmed by betrayal. She understood that her marriage had been built on a lie created to satisfy family expectations, not love or honesty. The humiliation felt sharper because she had trusted the promise. Anaya spent the rest of the day in a state of quiet calculation. The shock of discovering the affair had settled into something more controlled, almost mechanical. She no longer felt the dizziness of heartbreak. Instead, she felt an intense clarity that allowed her to see every detail of her situation without emotion clouding her judgment. She reviewed everything she had found, organizing the clues in her mind like pieces of a puzzle. The photograph, the emails, the meetings, each one confirmed that Karen had deliberately deceived her long before the wedding. Her life had been reshaped by someone who never intended to respect her, and that realization changed the way she looked at every moment that had passed since their marriage began. That evening, Anaya began observing Karen more closely. She paid attention to the times he left the house, the expressions he tried to hide, and the patterns in his routine. She noticed he always carried a specific keychain with him, separate from his regular house keys. It seemed too small and too discreet to belong to any property she knew of. The more she watched him handle it, the more she felt it was connected to the secret space where he met the woman from the photograph. Her instincts told her it was the missing link she needed. The next morning, while he was distracted, she found the keychain in the pocket of a jacket he had tossed aside in a hurry. She studied it carefully, turning it over in her hand until she found a small engraving that revealed the name of an apartment complex. A quick search on his laptop confirmed his frequent visits there. He had even saved the location on a map, hidden inside a folder he assumed she would never access. Anaya now had everything she needed: the name of the woman, the address of their meeting place, and the pattern of Karen's movements. Her anger no longer felt chaotic. It had shaped itself into a precise decision. She knew where he would be, when he would be there. Anaya waited until evening, allowing the day to pass with calm movements that concealed the turmoil inside her. She behaved as though nothing had changed, performing her routines with the same grace she had always shown. Karen, unaware that she had uncovered every detail of his secret life, continued preparing for yet another late-night outing. Anaya observed him quietly, memorizing his gestures, the way he checked his phone, the way he hurried through explanations, and the impatience he displayed when she lingered too close. Each action confirmed that he was headed toward the same apartment, the same woman, and the same lie he had been living since before their marriage. When he finally left the house, Anaya waited a few minutes before moving. She changed into clothes dark enough to blend into the night and placed everything she needed inside a small bag that wouldn't draw attention. Her steps were steady as she made her way toward the apartment complex whose location she had studied earlier. She reached the area before Karen. Knowing his routine gave her an advantage. She stayed hidden in the shadows, watching every entrance, every window, and every movement around the building. When Karen finally arrived, She saw him pause outside to check his phone. Moments later, a woman appeared at the door, the same woman from the photograph. Anaya watched as the two greeted each other with familiarity that confirmed every painful truth she had discovered. The sight pierced through her, but she did not allow emotion to break her focus. Instead, it strengthened her resolve. She memorized the floor they entered, the time they went inside, and the quietness of the building around them. Anaya waited patiently, letting several long minutes pass. The night air felt heavy, but her mind remained sharp. She knew that entering too soon might draw attention, and entering too late might reduce her chances of carrying out what she believed was necessary. Anaya reached the apartment floor with steady footsteps, careful not to make any sound that could alert anyone nearby. The hallway was dim, with only a few weak lights flickering above her. She paused in front of the door she had seen Karen and the woman enter earlier. The spare key she had taken from his belongings felt cold and heavy in her hand. For a brief moment, she remained still, allowing her breathing to settle. The decision she was about to carry out had grown inside her for days, shaped by betrayal, humiliation, and a sense of justice that only she could define. There was no turning back, not after everything she had uncovered. The lock opened quietly, surprising her with how easily the key slid into place. She stepped inside without hesitation, closing the door behind her with controlled calm. The apartment smelled of perfume unfamiliar to her, a detail that fueled the fire already burning inside. Soft lights illuminated the room, revealing the presence of the two people whose actions had destroyed her trust and shattered her life. She moved with precision, guided by the quiet rage she had suppressed since the day she discovered the affair. The moment unfolded swiftly. Anaya acted before either of them could understand what was happening. There was no struggle that lasted long, no dramatic chaos, only the cold execution of a decision she had prepared for with unwavering determination. Her movements were careful, calculated, and free from hesitation. She made sure each step she took left no identifiable trace behind. By the time the room fell silent, she knew both Karen and the woman were gone, their lives ending in the place they had used to hide their betrayal. Afterward, the atmosphere in the apartment shifted into an unsettling stillness. Anaya scanned the surroundings, ensuring there was nothing left that connected her to the scene. She wiped surfaces, rearranged items subtly. The next morning, the quiet routine of the city was disrupted when the bodies were discovered inside the apartment. A neighbor had reported an unusual smell and a door left slightly ajar, prompting the building staff to investigate. Within minutes, police arrived, sealing off the area and beginning what would soon become a complicated and highly publicized case. News spread quickly, drawing attention from residents who gathered outside, whispering theories and trying to make sense of what could have happened in a place known for privacy and discretion. The investigators immediately noted the unusual state of the crime scene. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints that pointed to a clear suspect, and no objects disturbed in a way that suggested chaos or panic. Everything looked strangely controlled, almost too orderly for a double killing. This raised suspicion that the act had been planned rather than impulsive. The detectives examined phone records, building logs, and any digital traces that could reveal who had entered or exited the apartment on the night of the murder. As the investigation expanded, Karen's background and recent life came under scrutiny. Detectives quickly uncovered details of his ongoing affair, confirming the existence of the relationship Anaya had already discovered on her own. This revelation shifted the direction of the case. Friends, colleagues, and family members were interviewed. Many expressed shock at the affair, while others admitted they had sensed tension but never imagined it would lead to such a tragedy. Anaya presented herself as composed yet devastated, maintaining an appearance of grief that aligned perfectly with what investigators expected from a newlywed who had experienced sudden loss. Her ability to control her emotions worked in her favor. She answered questions calmly, avoided contradictions, and offered explanations that matched the timeline she wanted them to believe. Weeks passed, and the case slowly drifted from the headlines, replaced by newer stories that captured public attention. But inside the police department, a small team of investigators continued to revisit the double murder. Something about the clean execution and the absence of obvious clues bothered them. Crimes committed out of passion often showed signs of chaos, panic, or carelessness. This case displayed the opposite. Every corner of the apartment seemed touched by caution, as if the killer had moved with complete control. The precision hinted at a personal motive hidden beneath layers of planning. Detectives re-examined building surveillance footage, which had initially been dismissed due to poor lighting and camera angles. After enhancing the recordings, they noticed a shadowy figure entering the building shortly before the murders took place. The person's face wasn't visible, but their height, body shape, and posture provided enough information to narrow their profile. When they compared these traits to the people closest to Karen, one name slowly resurfaced: Anaya. The resemblance was subtle, yet enough to reopen questions that had been put aside in the early days of the investigation. They reviewed her interviews, her movements, and the way she had handled herself after the deaths. Her calmness, once seen as grief in control, now appeared unusually steady. Most newly married women would have been overwhelmed by shock and emotional collapse. Anaya, however, had shown a level of composure that felt almost rehearsed. The investigators dug deeper, uncovering the tension she had experienced in the first days of the marriage and the evidence she had found of the affair. The motive they once overlooked now emerged as the central foundation of the crime. Eventually, the enhanced footage was paired with digital traces from Karen's devices. Subtle inconsistencies appeared in the timelines that Anaya had provided. Each small detail, insignificant on its own,